Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Thursday night edition of the program. Happy to be here. And our phone number, if you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And lots of news. I got to tell you, you would think the week before Thanksgiving, not that busy of a news day, but it is. We have a lot. I'm going to see if I can cram as much of this into today's show as I can, because I hate to leave, stuff for tomorrow. That's not new anymore. But stuff that I'm going to talk about, right? Because you already know the news. I'm going to react to the news and give you my commentary on the news. And it's interesting stuff. Matt Gaetz, who I think would have been an amazing attorney general, has withdrawn his name from consideration as attorney general, as you probably well know now, saying that, it'll be a distraction, yada, yada. Okay, got it, brother. You're a patriot for doing it, for stepping aside and giving it a go. He gave it his best shot, realized it's going to be an uphill battle, didn't want to slow the president down, got out of the way. Can't hate him for that. And Trump turned around and quickly picked the former attorney general of the state of Florida, Pam Bondi, as the new selection for attorney general. I think she's a great pick. I've always enjoyed her commentary when I've seen her on television. I met her very briefly at Madison Square Garden a couple of weeks back. She was with Linda McMahon, and I was talking to Hogan Gidley. I kind of waved, and they waved, and I think I said hello, and that was it. But seems like a very charming person. She's obviously a good lawyer, has a good track record behind her, and I'm hopeful that she will go in there and shake things up, because whoever becomes attorney general needs to shake things up at the Department of Justice and needs to make sure that we bring in somebody of the caliber of Kash Patel as FBI director. Let's see, what else do we have here? There's a couple other things. The Biden administration is announcing another $275 million to Ukraine with 55 days to go until Biden is out. Isn't that crazy? And Jen Psaki. Now, Jen Psaki was upset about one of the nominees and happy about another one. She was very happy that Gaetz rescinded his consideration, withdrew from consideration, but she was very upset with others like Tulsi Gabbard. Listen to this.
So Matt Gaetz just withdrew his nomination today. So what does that mean? Donald Trump's influence is not never ending. It's not just the report, and I'm sure that was a piece that pushed him over the edge. He's been meeting with senators on the Hill. He may know that he doesn't have the votes to get across the finish line. That's encouraging, because I was skeptical. Trump's power has bounds to it. That means pick your next cabinet member that you have concerns about. Here is one of mine, Tulsi Gabbard for DNI, who is an apologist for Bashar al-Assad, an apologist for Vladimir Putin, and is someone who Trump is nominating to oversee the intelligence agencies. Doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. That should be unacceptable. The intelligence people who serve in the government are not political particularly at all, I promise you. So there's one to focus on. Raise some questions, express concerns, call your members of Congress, because Matt Gaetz is no longer the nominee, and it's now time to focus on the next.
So she doesn't like Tulsi Gabbard and wants to go after her. And what I will say to this is very simple. Tulsi Gabbard is going to face confirmation. That's a hearing. She's going to be grilled by members of the United States Senate who are going to ask questions and then vote as to whether she, whether they give, they're going to give their advice and their consent. And that's it. If she withstands the process, amen, praise God, hallelujah. If she doesn't, she doesn't. That's what the process is about. What happened to Gaetz was this kind of hearing before the hearing. Like, we don't even want to give you a hearing. We're going to tell you right now, we're not even going to listen to what you have to say. We're going to base it all on this litmus test that we're going to call the ethics report, and you're out of here. And this is the same reason why I was against pushing out George Santos, who admitted to doing all sorts of things that were not on the up and up. Got it. I wasn't defending any of those things he did. I was defending, in many ways, just the due process of the process, right? You've got to give people their day in court, so to speak. You've got to let people have their hearing. You've got to let the voters decide in the case of George Santos, right? At some point, we don't need to intervene in certain things. If the president's out of line, you have impeachment. If not, you have election. Those are the remedies. We don't need to go and put Trump in jail. We don't need to go and put a target over him. We don't need to do any of these things that in my opinion, the radicals on the left have done to him. So that's Jen Psaki. A little bit later, I'm going to tell you what happened to a district attorney in Manhattan as this Tren de Aragua stuff gets out of hand. But straight ahead, I want to talk about Pam Bondi. I want to talk about Matt Gaetz. I want to talk about a few things that are going on, right? Because there's a few things in the news. Is Jussie Smollett back in the news? Well, we're going to find out in a little bit. So keep it locked right here. We're going to have one of Trump's attorneys on with us, and he's scheduled to join us in the next segment. So I'm going to give you the phone number after we're done with that chat. We're going to do open phones at the end of every segment, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
We have learned that Matt Gaetz has withdrawn his nomination for Attorney General. He sent out this social media post saying, "I had excellent meetings with senators yesterday. I appreciate their thoughtful feedback and the incredible support of so many. While the momentum was strong, it is clear that my confirmation was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance." And so he has resigned, and that does mean that his House seat is now vacant.
That is a report from Fox News, and that's the big story of the day, that Congressman Matt Gaetz has withdrawn his nomination for Attorney General, and former Attorney General for the state of Florida, Pam Bondi, is now in the running, nominated by President Trump. I want to get some reaction to that, and as well as the Jesse Smollett debacle a little bit later. But first, let's bring him in. Jesse Binnall is an attorney for President Trump, a partner at the Binnall Law Group. Jesse Binnall, welcome back.
Rich, thanks so much for having me.
You bet, and congratulations on your big win. I know you worked really hard over the last year or 2 years to vindicate Trump, and we're finally here. So let's talk about this development here with Matt Gaetz. Do you think this is a big wrinkle? Is it par for the course? I mean, from my perspective, analyzing it politically, I think these things happen pretty regularly. You know, somebody puts somebody up for a position, doesn't work out, they pick somebody else. Am I being too flip about it?
No, I don't think you're being flip at all. And, let me just say that it just shows that President Trump is willing to be courageous in putting the right person up for the job, regardless of whether he thinks it's politically correct. The sad thing is that we've got a few people a few senators that have an R next to their name that didn't have the courage necessary to support Matt Gaetz, because Matt Gaetz, I think, would have been an excellent Attorney General. Matt Gaetz I truly understands the Department of Justice. I've been in depositions with him on Capitol Hill, where he was the only member of Congress who spent an entire day in a deposition and just knows the facts backwards and forwards. He's an excellent guy. As the president said, I'm sure he has an excellent future in front of him. But it's America's loss. That being said, the president went immediately with another A player, somebody who will be an absolutely outstanding Attorney General in picking Pam Bondi for the position, and somebody who has served as a state Attorney General for 8 years, and is very, I think, dedicated to rooting out the lawfare that we've seen in our Department of Justice. She knows that the Department of Justice has strayed from its roots of, for instance, going after violent crime and protecting Americans, to instead trying to enforce a political agenda, and that this isn't going to be small little tweaks in order to bring the Department of Justice back to what it really should be. It's going to need some major overhauling, and Pam Bondi has the courage to do that.
Jesse Binnall, I agree with you 1,000% that we need massive reform, and I agree with you also that A, she's loyal, and B, she's competent and able, Pam Bondi, to pull this off. I think the bigger question is dealing with the swamp. I think that's the only place where Matt Gaetz might have had a leg up, is that he's been in the swamp for a number of years now, fighting off the alligators. Whereas, she's been enjoying sunny South Florida, and God bless her, right? Not a slight on her in any way. I wish I was in Florida. But I think that was part of President Trump's learning curve, right? In his first go round, is that he came and he thought, I'm a New Yorker. You can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And then you get to the swamp and you realize, man, these people are more vicious than anything we've ever seen. What are your thoughts? In that
but
regard?
let me just say on top of that, one of the really important things that the president has done is this time is the entire team he's putting together for the Department of Justice, because it's not going to be just Pam Bondi.
Right.
And make no mistake, Pam Bondi, while luckily for her, she's been dealing with the far more tame type of alligators in Florida, as opposed to the vicious backstabbing alligators in Washington, D.C., she has spent plenty of time in Washington, D.C. She knows the way politics works. She knows the way that the swamp works. But on top of that, you get that team, people like Todd Blanche, Emil, the Principal Deputy Attorney General, John Sowers, the Solicitor General, and the team at the Department of Justice continues to be fleshed out. These are lawyers that really, truly know the Department of Justice, know that the bureaucracy, and are going to be able to help her gut it.
Yeah, I think that's well put, and it's my hope that it goes just that smoothly, because we definitely need that type of reform. Now, putting you in that position, what's the first thing you do when you get to Washington, or what do you recommend the first thing Pam Bondi do when she gets to Washington?
You have to get rid of people's fiefdoms. There are so many career lawyers at the Department of Justice that, A, believe that they're above the law, and B, think that there are certain aspects of the Department of Justice that belong to them because they've spent years there and they've created their own fiefdoms there. Mm-hmm. You need to take and, while you can't just take and go in on day one, unfortunately, I wish you could, fire the entire bureaucracy. There are people that do need to be fired early. Don't get me wrong, but then there are other people that need to be transferred around, and it can't just be that they find a way to just get a leg up in a new position that's going to allow them to obstruct President Trump's agenda. There may be some people that need to be transferred to other parts of the country. We need to get some of these DOJ jobs out of the swamp, out of Washington, D.C. We are going to need a lot of lawyers, for instance, handling immigration cases, because that's going to be a huge priority in the new Department of Justice. And so you need to get rid of these fiefdoms. Another thing that you need to do is you need to appoint lawyers to investigate the Department of Justice's misconduct, and quite frankly, other state prosecutors' misconduct as well. And so, for instance, when lawyers have used their position in the federal government in order to enact a political agenda, and they've violated people's civil rights when doing that, that is a violation of federal law. And so we need to be taking that very, very seriously. That needs to be a priority in the Department of Justice. And people that, for instance, have used their position in written politically charged briefs attacking President Trump, supporting President Biden while acting on behalf of the United States in criminal matters, like we've seen in some of the J6 cases. Those are just some things I think should be investigated and charges should be brought if we can show that prosecutors have been using their jobs to advance a political agenda.
Now, Jesse Binnall, attorney for President Trump, when you talk about I agree with what you're saying, and I'm just trying to clarify it a step further with asking the question. Do you recommend that these are isolated instances where we go after Attorney A, Attorney B, Attorney C for their particular malfeasance, or is this a systemic problem that we say, you know what, we have to go with Congress, we need rules changes, new regulations, or is it a combination thereof?
Well, it's a combination for sure. And but it is, I mean, let's be clear, the problems in DOJ are systemic. But the Department of Justice likes to talk about its independence. They believe very strongly that they are an independent department, and that is just completely wrong. It's against the very spirit of the United States Constitution. The United States Constitution didn't create a fourth branch of government for the Department of Justice. The Constitution says that the president controls the executive branch. And, you know, if you actually want to spend some time and look at, you know, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, the debates that the founders had when they were forming our Constitution, there are people that didn't want that unitary executive theory, that the idea that you would have one president that's in charge of the executive department. There are some people that want something similar to what a lot of states have, where you could have a president of one party, a vice president of another party, and an attorney general of a separate party as well. And they decided not to do that. They wanted it to be cohesive, and I think the founders put together, you know, the most amazing document ever when they governance document ever when they gave us our Constitution, and they were right in the way that they did it. And the beauty of it is the checks and balances. And what the bureaucrats at the Department of Justice want to believe is that by being independent, it means they're accountable to no one, that they are above the law and they don't have to answer to anyone for their actions, and that they can use their own personal political agenda in order to go into court and pursue that rather than the law. And that is simply not right. The executive department, the President of the United States, controls the Department of Justice, and the President of the United States, through his direct acts and through his Attorney General, can reform the Department of Justice without necessarily Congress. Although there may very well be some legislation that needs to be adopted.
Jesse Binnall is with us commenting on the nomination of Pam Bondi, and when we return, some conversation on Jussie Smollett overturning his conviction in Chicago. Folks, stick with us. We're coming right back with President Trump's attorney, Jesse Binnall. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
A big decision by the Illinois Supreme Court. Justices have reversed the conviction of actor Jussie Smollett. The former Empire actor took his case to the state's high court in September. He wanted his 2021 conviction of falsely reporting a hate crime overturned. In a statement, the court said, "Today we resolve a question about the state's responsibility to honor the agreements it makes with defendants. Specifically, we address whether a dismissal of a case by Noel Prosecki allows the state to bring a second prosecution within the dismissal was entered as part of an agreement with the defendant, and the defendant has performed his part of the bargain. We hold that a second prosecution under these circumstances is a due process violation, and we therefore reverse defendant's conviction.
All right, amigos, that report from CBS Chicago. And I want to get some reaction to this from our guest, Jesse Binnall. Jesse Binnall is an attorney for President Trump. He's been with him for the last couple of years, in the trenches throughout all of these civil issues and so many of the other cases they've had. And he's here with us now. And Jesse Binnall, I want to use some of your legal expertise here to help me understand something, because I support due process, and I want to do the right thing legally, but I dislike Jussie Smollett, right? Because this report it lacked so much that it needed to have in there, like the fact that his previous conviction was for lying about being attacked and being attacked with bleach and a noose by two white men screaming "It's MAGA country," wearing MAGA hats, when it was really two black men that were actors. And then they ratted him out. And the whole thing is just a disaster. It's fake, it's phony, it's fraud. And the police chief, I remember, the Chicago police chief, very upset with him for the resources that they spent to have to disprove all of his lies. And here we are, some political connections a year or three later, and voila, no conviction. What's going on?
Yeah, Cook County justice at its finest, I think you could probably say. Here's what it comes down to. I think the Illinois Supreme Court, and this may not be really popular, but I think the Illinois Supreme Court got it right. I think that there's nothing as important in the world as making sure that a defendant's due process rights are protected, and that includes defendants that I don't like personally, and that I think acts that they engaged in are vile. Because at the end of the day, if we don't protect due process and these constitutional rights that we talked about in the last segment for all of us, then they won't protect any of us. And so, that being said, let's look at I think the biggest problem here, which is the prosecutors originally gave him a sweetheart deal to get him off the hook there that should have never been done, and it's those prosecutors right now that let him off the hook that we should really be angry about. That it would be very happy to allow officers resources to be wasted and looking for a fake hate crime when they could be saving people's lives on the streets of Chicago, which in recent years, of course, has just truly gone to hell under Democratic leadership. So that is I think where the true crime here is the fact that these prosecutors let him off the hook originally with just this sweetheart deal. And as vile as what he did was, he still is entitled to due process under law.
And in your opinion, do you think that the court got it right this time around, that his defense was viable and this really did violate his due process?
Well, I think the important thing is that, and where I think it really was important here is, if you are going to null process case, and if that null process part of some sort of agreement, that the state has to live up to its side of the deal there. And you can't, so regardless of the merits of the case, and in this case it doesn't reach the merits. This case doesn't say what Jussie Smollett did by trying to, invent these cartoon characters that, the left imagine America First Americans to be like, in order to say that they attacked him and engaged in some horrible hate crime that never happened. That is truly, truly vile. But the court didn't talk about that. What they just said is that prosecutors have a duty, and they have to live up to their side of the bargain, I think is really what that decision was today.
Man, what a decision. Now, let's move on to what's ahead for you. I've seen some of your colleagues are either named to be in the administration, others are rumored to be joining the administration. Will you be one of the guys that remains on the outside? Are you planning on going on the inside? Is there a future in the swamp for you? Jesse Binnall?
Well, as much as I may not like it, I do have to remain up in the Washington, D.C. area for now for my firm and my business. And, the one thing that I'll say is that I will always serve my country, whether it's in government or outside of government, where, we need good lawyers that are pursuing justice. My plan is to stay outside right now and continue some of these important fights that we're engaged on behalf of a lot of our clients. We're going to need very good people on the outside because we know that the swamp is not going to go down without a fight, right? This incredibly powerful bureaucracy that has been built up for 140 years now is not going to simply roll over. And so, while there's a lot that some of the excellent people that are going to government can do, we're going to need people on the outside to continue to fight them. That's currently my plan. At the same time, there's nobody more important. There's nobody that's doing as much for America in decades, if not longer, than what President Trump is doing right now. And I'll always serve at his direction and pleasure.
Jesse Binnall, I appreciate that. And a while back, I interviewed Alina Habba, and I asked her, how does a nice girl from Jersey like you end up becoming a lawyer for Donald Trump? And she laughed, and she gave me a really a good story. But I pose the same question to you. How did that happen for you?
I came on board back in 2016, and I came on board because there were people in the Republican establishment that were trying to steal the Republican nomination for president from Donald Trump. And I was really proud to go on board before the 2016 convention when delegates were being selected to go to the 2016 convention and make sure that they were delegates that were actually going to do the will of the primary voters and try to and make sure that not only Donald Trump was our nominee, but that the Republican Party truly again became the America First Party that it is today. And I've served him in various capacities since then over the past almost 9 years now. And it's just been, an incredible journey to see what this movement has become. One of the strongest movements in American history, where we've finally said that we're fed up with the bureaucracy running America, that it was time for America to start giving directions to Washington, D.C. again, rather than vice versa.
Outstanding. Well, sir, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I want to thank you for doing everything you do on behalf of the country, what you've done for the president, and what you do for our listeners here, bringing us up to speed. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with you, Rich.
You bet. And folks, we return with your calls, your questions, comments, and concerns right after this.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I'm so glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I think that the president deserves to have a cabinet that reflects his agenda, that's going to implement his agenda. And you made this point just a second ago, Jesse. I think the thing that really the press and the establishment hates so much is how broad this coalition is. They can't believe that people like RFK and Tulsi Gabbard are in this coalition and in this cabinet. And it just reflects the breadth of President Trump's mandate, the breadth of President Trump's coalition. This isn't your typical cabinet, and that's as it should be. It reflects the winning majority coalition Donald Trump put together.
That, of course, is Senator Josh Hawley keeping it real and keeping it 100% right there. That's the truth. Trump needs to be able to govern, and he needs to be able to govern with the team he selects. Let them be scrutinized and get the up or down vote, but let them be scrutinized. What we can't have is this pre-scrutiny sabotage, right? That they're trying to just knock people out. They did the same thing to Trump, right? They said, oh, we're going to get him off the ballot. Stop being such a wuss. Let him get on the ballot. This is why. They were afraid they would get beat at the ballot box, and they did. They got spanked. Anyway, that is the case, and Trump has put together, I think, a very good cabinet. He's got great backups in mind. I'm sure he's got a backup to his backup, like most successful people do. You always got to have a backup to your backup, and I'm loving the nimbleness, if I could use that word, with moving from Gaetz to Pam Bondi. Just very smooth, very good, and plus he may have gotten his desired result already, right? Haven't you seen the stories that were out there? People in the Department of Justice are lawyering up. Perhaps the mere mention of Matt Gaetz is what got them to lawyer up, right? So now you bring in someone else and say, all right, by the way, I'm not going to do it anymore. Who knows if that was part of the plan all along? These guys are very smart, and they think a few steps ahead of everybody else. Anyway, I'm going to get to the phones. Excuse me. 833-4825-337, 833-4-Valdez. Let's go to Montana. Kalispell, Montana. Check in with Lance on KOFI. Lance, go right ahead.
Good evening, sir. Thank you. Hey, I brought my crayon pack of 128 colors with a sharpener and a couple of sheets of commentary to fill in some of the white spots. Remember the sound that was being made in 2016 when Hillary Clinton lost the election, the gnashing, wailing of teeth? I feel that that kind of sound's being made right now amongst a bunch of us when Mr. Levin said that he wouldn't consider being our AG. I mean, I'm literally rending at the heart, because if there was anyone most qualified for that position, God bless, it'd be him.
Well, Lance, I'll tell you this. I think the great one, Mark Levin, would be an amazing attorney general. And the issue that he's always shared is really two, right? It's a twofold thing. I would say, number one, he's always said he's done his time. He served Reagan 8 years. He served Reagan mainly in the Justice Department, but he spent some time at the Department of Ed. He was chief of staff at the Department of Justice. Other than the attorney general, chief of staff is the highest ranking person there, outside of the AG and the deputies and all that. And I got to say, Mark is a brilliant lawyer. He understands the swamp. He knows how to keep his nose clean and get things done. And, despite being a guy that talks on the radio for 3 hours a day, he's not a big talker. Right? He's a big doer, but he's not a big talker. So I agree with you that he'd be a great AG. However, after leaving government, Mark goes and does this, landmark case on school choice. And then he gets into radio and he drops bombs, right? He says provocative things on the radio, and those things are all cataloged. And eventually you go for a confirmation hearing, and the same thing they do to Gaetz is what they're going to do to Levin. When you put someone like that, someone where, they've been very clear and very forward, and they like to punch up. And they're going to say, on such and such date, did you say this? And he said, yes, that's right. I said it, right? and just imagine a confirmation hearing like that. While it would be epic, it would be difficult, because that's just the nature of the climate that we're in. The other part of that, which I think I alluded to, is the fact that, like he says, he already did his time, and he's here now. Very few do what Mark Levin does, right? Mark Levin writes a book, and it's a #1 bestseller for weeks at a time at a newspaper that he calls the New York Slimes, right? And he's been trashing them since day one, calling them out for what they are. Yet he gets to #1, and he's there weeks at a time. I think 2021, that last book, or the book before last, he was the most read or most sold nonfiction author of the year, selling more books than anybody. You're talking 1 million books or something like that. Just some ridiculous number. So very few people are able to perform at the level he's in. He's a great television broadcaster. He's a great radio broadcaster. He's a great lawyer. He's a great author / historian in many ways. So I think Mark is prolific in so many of those ways, and putting him inside the White House or in Foggy Bottom or something like that would limit the reach. It would limit the impact. And for that reason, I agree with him that he needs to be on the outside. But it would be epic. It would be a thing for the ages to have a confirmation hearing with Levin in it. I agree.
And,
Lance, did we lose you?
I get where he's coming, but, we're kind of at a crossroads in this nation right now. And it's like, it's almost to the point where we either lay down and step up or we step aside, and I would like to
and I think
see
that's what's happening, right? I mean, just to say, I think that's exactly what's happening. I think Levin has stepped aside so that others can step up, like Pam Bondi, right? Or Matt Gaetz, or even in the last administration, Matt Whitaker, right? Matt Whitaker is somebody. I was hanging out with Matt Whitaker once. I was with my daughters. He was with his daughter, Allison Whitaker. Shout out to Allison. She's a very nice girl. And he told me, he said, my career has somewhat modeled Mark Levin's. He said, I was chief of staff to the attorney general, and then, I got appointed attorney general. And he had a lot of respect for Levin and still does, I'm sure, and vice versa. But the point is, there are a lot of really competent people in the running, right? And you've got, while Matt Whitaker, former General Whitaker, he's now the ambassador to NATO, or will be once confirmed, if confirmed. But it doesn't change the fact that, he still has that expertise of going through that first Trump administration. So I think there's a lot there. There's a lot of young talent, a lot of people that are, ready to do what you said, ready to step up. And then there's other people that are ready to step aside so that they can do what they do best. And I think that's the situation that we're in. Lance, I appreciate your thoughts on that. And I'm with you. In wanting the great one to serve as AG. Folks, we're coming right back. Shout out to KOFI. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, folks, welcome back. Again, we're taking calls every hour, open phones across America, plus some conversation coming up on what's going on in Israel. As you know, just a few days ago, we had the news that Israel had bombed a nuclear facility belonging to Iran. That was exciting news. Considering Iran was like, no, we're not creating nuclear bombs. We're not doing anything. We're just enriching a little bit of yellow cake, but not a lot. Well, guess what? They have a whole facility, and there that went. And we're scheduled to tap in with the former advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu, who, by the way, has a warrant for his arrest. Going to get into that with her as well. But before we get into that, I want to get to Jason. He's in Aurora, Illinois, WLS. Jason, go right ahead.
Hi, how are you doing? I'm wondering
Wonderful,
what your opinion is on the state's attorney that offered Jussie Smollett this such a light sentence.
Yeah, Kim Foxx. Yeah, well, from the beginning, I think there was a lot of very accurate criticism that she was a big Democrat, she was an Obama person, and that she was being very helpful to Jussie Smollett. And I think that's right, which is why they had to go ahead and try him again, which apparently, messed up his due process. So because of her, we have no case on Jussie Smollett, and he's a free man today with no record. So, yeah, Kim Foxx, no bueno. Jason, thanks for your call. America, I'm Rich Valdez, coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour of our program tonight. We're live, we're national. I'm happy to be here this Thursday night, and here's the phone number if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And in this hour, I want to talk about a bunch of things. I want to talk a little bit about the clash that Trump has as commander-in-chief and dealing with the titans of industry like Elon Musk and Tim Cook at Apple and all these other, titans of industry that the commander-in-chief has to deal with. And we'll talk about that with a presidential historian in a little bit, former White House aide and former deputy secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. But I also want to talk about Prime Minister Netanyahu and how today the International Criminal Court decided to issue an arrest warrant for him. Again, they have 125 member nations. France and Canada have said, we honor the ICC, and if in effect they're saying if there is a warrant for Prime Minister Netanyahu's arrest, that they're going to go ahead and execute that arrest if he's in their jurisdiction. Crazy talk, right? Anyway, we will get to the bottom of that in a little bit, maybe in the next segment. But right now, I want to talk about how karma works. Because, sadly, one of these Venezuelan MS-13, their new rivals, Tren de Aragua, one of those Venezuelan transnational criminal gang people has been accused of robbing someone in New York City. Yeah, that's not too crazy. But they also performed a lewd act, and the somebody was an assistant district attorney. Listen to this.
A smiling Brandon Somoza being led out of the Midtown South precinct on West 35th Street. Police say at about 2 a.m. Sunday, he robbed a 38-year-old woman in the hallway of her Hell's Kitchen apartment building. He allegedly grabbed her purse, cell phone, and bank cards and also performed a lewd act. The victim is a Manhattan assistant DA. She was not injured. Police traced her stolen cell phone to a hotel on West 45th Street, which led them to believe the suspect is a migrant, and they were able to track him down. Police say he was using drugs on the street and had stolen items with him. Police believe he is part of Tren de Aragua. That's the Venezuelan gang that has preyed on people in Times Square and Central Park. Somoza is facing a number of counts, including sexually motivated robbery and burglary. He also has 6 prior arrests, all from this year on similar crimes, and he's believed to have arrived in the U.S. in February of 2023. In Lower Manhattan, Lauren Glassberg, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
So the woman that he robbed, a 38-year-old female prosecutor, assistant district attorney in Manhattan, and again, this Mr. Somoza, the gangbanger here, he followed her allegedly into her building on 44th Street. Then the sicko grabbed what the prosecutor believed was a gun from his pocket and demanded cash as he cornered her in the building's stairwell. The terrified 38-year-old female prosecutor threw her phone down, credit cards and debit cards, as well as her ID. But then Mr. Somoza wasn't done. He kept yelling and telling the prosecutor to give her the PIN numbers to her cards. He then pocketed the money, and here's a quote from the report, began masturbating towards the victim for a period of several moments. Who does that? Somoza ran off trying to use the credit cards at a nearby restaurant. He stole her money from an ATM. Prosecutor ID'd Somoza from a photo lineup, prompting his arrest at the Row Hotel. That's a war zone even worse than the Roosevelt Hotel. And again, once a very nice hotel in New York City, in Midtown. I'm all over the news. I'm famous. My friends told me Somoza was bragging to the police as they cuffed him. He was apparently high as a kite, and that's why he was doing these things. They said he was yawning, smiling, and smirking in court. And there's a few pictures here in the New York Post. And one of them, he's just sleeping. He could care less. Now, this guy apparently has been arrested 6 times for similar crimes. Let me see here. And he just never came to court. The cases include petty larceny in Manhattan, stealing several thousands of dollars worth of merchandise, as well as a Queens County incident where he pled guilty to assaulting a store worker while stealing the goods. Those 2 cases were on track to be dismissed. But the prosecutor that's on the case now says they'll be pursued after the creepy robbery. Isn't that something? So you have to rob a prosecutor in order to get them to actually prosecute your case, because they were going to drop these. When he did this to other people, when he robbed other people, other businesses, other women that he accosted, that was okay, and they were going to let it go because they are part of the sanctuary city stupidity. I tell you, if this isn't karma, I don't know what is. The current prosecutor on this particular case, Hozempa, he says his criminal history makes it clear that he makes his primary living through the theft of property. The defendant is a foreign national who faces almost certain removal and deportation if he's convicted of these charges. If he's convicted. Isn't that something? I think he should, just for the fact that he did it, right? Forget the conviction. If you get arrested, you should be thrown out. Anyway, the prosecutor said while arguing that Somoza is a flight risk. Immigration already filed a detainer in relation to the case. He's also homeless, showing a lack of community ties. He has a defense attorney, a guy named David Lieberman, and the attorney's asking for reasonable cash bail. Somoza stretched and appeared to yawn as the judge held him without bail. He then sat on a bench and waited to be escorted back into a holding cell, slouching, yawning, and muttering to himself. Wow. This is what Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Eric Adams, the mayor, Mayorkas, and the Democrats in power, this is what they've done. Just a real shame. All I could think of is, as a kid, I saw Rudy Giuliani become mayor. When he was elected mayor, the city became clean, it became robust, it became nice. Disney moved right into 42nd Street, a place once permeated with prostitutes and peep shows, turned into the Lion King and a Disney store. And here we are, devolving back into the chaos that we once were. It's a real shame. Very, very sad. Anyway, we will continue the conversation on Netanyahu and everything else that's going on with the ICC, the bombing of the Iranian nuclear facility, and so much more. Straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Israel says that it has destroyed part of Iran's nuclear program in the retaliatory strikes that it carried out across the country last month. The Israeli Prime Minister has confirmed this without giving any details, but a report from the Axios news site indicates that a nuclear weapons research facility making plastic explosives at the Parchin military complex was eliminated. Now, Iran has not commented on this report, but it comes as Iran's foreign ministry is slamming new sanctions by the European Union and also the United Kingdom against Tehran over its support for Russia's war on Ukraine.
That is a report from I-24 about Netanyahu and Israel and the IDF doing what they have been succeeding at lately, which is defending Israel against the sponsors of terror in Iran and their proxies like Hamas and the Houthis and Hezbollah. And no good deed goes unpunished, right? So these guys saved the world from this nuclear Armageddon that's in the making. And guess what? The International Criminal Court decides to pursue a complaint from a non-state, the Palestinian Authority, and they issue an arrest warrant for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, just really unthinkable, saying that he's guilty of some sort of war crimes. Now, I want to get reaction to this, both the nuclear facility getting hit and this arrest warrant from former advisor to the office of Prime Minister Netanyahu, Ruthie Blum. Ruthie Blum, today, Prime Minister Netanyahu responded to these allegations from the International Criminal Court. Listen to this.
The truth is simple. No war is more just than the war that Israel has been waging in Gaza after Hamas attacked us unprovoked, launching the worst massacre against the Jewish people since the Holocaust. The decision to issue an arrest warrant against me, the democratically elected Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and our former defense minister, was made by a rogue prosecutor who's trying to extricate himself from sexual harassment charges, and by biased judges who are motivated by anti-Semitic sentiments against the one and only Jewish state.
So these judges and prosecutors in the ICC have political motivation against Israel. They're Jew haters, yet they're trying to be the judge, the jury, and everything else involved. Ruthie Blum, what say you?
Well, hello.
Welcome.
What I say is that I agree with every word that Netanyahu said. And the only question I have is why Israel cooperated with the ICC at all this year by sending a judge to the panel there. It's a kangaroo court. It has no jurisdiction over Israel or the United States, neither of which is a party to the Rome Statute that gives that court some kind of authority that it doesn't actually possess. But what I'd like to say about this is that in 2020, then President Trump sanctioned the ICC and threatened to revoke visas or not allow members of the ICC to enter the United States. And in 2021, the Biden administration canceled those sanctions. So I think we can look forward now in January after President Trump is inaugurated. We can look forward to seeing new sanctions by the United States or reimposed on the ICC.
Well, good. I think there has not been a time better than this for the United States, I think, to double down and say, look, we don't belong to this kangaroo court, as you've put it. We don't ever want to be a part of it. I, for one, I can tell you, it's a very un-American idea, right? To have some court where other countries have weigh in on what we're doing. I think it kind of challenges our idea of national sovereignty. And to me, that flies in the face of Americanism.
Well, absolutely. But you see, if the actual idea behind such an international court, I mean, we've seen, again, with the UN, all these international bodies supposedly formed to do good in the world. In other words, to prevent genocides, to call out bad actors. But in fact, they became the bad actors themselves. Right. This is all a political. This is a political witch hunt. This has nothing to do with justice or courts. I mean, that's the big joke, and it's not funny, of course, because unfortunately, the atmosphere in the world right now, in the West, I mean, it's one thing in the countries that are not allies of the United States or Israel to be filled with anti-Semitism, but we're seeing an explosion of it all over the West. And we see now allies of Israel and the United States saying that they're going to abide by those arrest warrants. And I'm talking about, for example, the Netherlands and France. They're not the
Canada.
only ones, but this is, outrageous.
Yeah. I just, again, and I'm not saying anything's beyond anybody, but you really have to ask yourself, what are they going to do? Obviously Netanyahu's not going to go somewhere where they're announcing, hey, we're going to lock you up. But it really lets them know that they're, it's a line in the sand to say, hey, we're not on your side. And I think in the climate that we have today, that almost comes across as saying, hey, we don't like the Jews or the idea of a Jewish state, because, you have to be a special type of blind to not see that you guys are fighting a war that was brought to your doorstep.
Well, absolutely. Listen, it's a war basically that's been brought to Israel's doorstep since its inception. Okay, Israel is still basically fighting the war of independence. Sadly, the taboo on public anti-Semitism after World War II seems to have completely run out. Okay, and now anti-Semitism is normalized. You see that across the United States. Of all countries, the United States, I grew up there, and I didn't suffer from anti-Semitism. You now see across college campuses open Jew hatred, and if not open Jew hatred, open hatred of Israel, which is actually the same thing. When you chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, what you mean is rid of Jews. So if that's not anti-Semitism, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Now, Ruthie Blum, I want to remind the audience that you're a senior contributing editor and columnist at the Jewish News Syndicate. Let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with the amazing work that you're doing, your columns, and everything else.
Oh, well, everybody should read jns.org, where there's amazing, it's not only my columns, but we have many excellent columnists and news to keep you up to date on the news in Israel and the Jewish world. Also, I have a podcast called Israel Undiplomatic with my co-host Mark Regev, and we're on JNS TV and on YouTube. So that's how you can do it. I highly recommend jns.org.
Outstanding. Folks, give her a follow on X or Twitter at Ruthie Blum, and check out jns.org to learn more about her columns and the work they're doing there. Ruthie Blum, I really appreciate you being with us tonight. Godspeed to you. Keep up the great work.
Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure. And folks, we continue. We have some conversation on Howard Lutnick being selected as the Secretary of Commerce. I'm excited about that. We're going to have some discussion on that, as well as a couple of other topics. Plus your calls, open phones across America in the final segment of each hour, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
These past 14 days, y'all, have felt like Trump is casting his administration like it's a reality TV show. But with this amount of effort exerted on individuals who are exceptional in their lack of qualifications, you have to openly wonder what they've promised Trump and what he promised them in return. What's implied here is a pseudo quid pro quo, where you hire individuals who have issues that can only be resolved by a powerful king, and then that king, Donald Trump, gets permanent loyalty and obedience in return, which involves destroying any impartial federal system and twisting it in his favor and that of his favored friends, and corporations.
That, of course, Joy Reid on MSNBC last night, again, saying that Trump is picking cabinet picks with issues that only a powerful king like him could resolve in order for him to get permanent loyalty from them. I think Joy Reid is part of the old establishment that's stuck on the idea of pomp and circumstance and a CV that's very impressive, as opposed to actual ability that's very impressive. And she's not the only one. A lot of people are stuck there. But I say not that necessary, right? It's not. There's a lot of people that are very capable that didn't go to Harvard. But I want to talk about that. We're going to talk about a lot of things. And there's a gentleman by the name of Howard Lutnick. And he spoke at the rally that I was at Madison Square Garden. It was really, really cool. He was up there with Elon Musk, and they were saying at the time, how they were both going to be co-chairing the DOGE, right? The Department of Government Efficiency, abolishing different federal agencies. And I got a quick clip of that. Listen to this.
125 years ago, we had no income tax. And all we had was tariffs. All we had was tariffs. And we had so much money.
And we did. We had so much money. There was an entire industrial revolution. All sorts of things were born from that, right? The conveyor belt, the Model T, you name it, light bulbs, telephones, phonographs, record players, all sorts of inventions. And it was a great time to be alive. And that, again, is Howard Lutnick. He's the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. So I want to talk about his appointment to the administration, to the cabinet as Secretary of Commerce. And I want to do that with Tevi Troy. Tevi Troy is a former White House aide, and he also served as Deputy Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. He's also a presidential historian and has written the book, The Power and the Money, The Epic Clashes Between Commanders-in-Chief and Titans of Industry. Tevi Troy, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Rich. You know, when you started playing that clip of Joy Reid, I thought I hadn't heard her since she was crying on election night. So it was a kind of a memory lane walk to hear her again.
You missed her, right? Yeah, she's terrific.
Yeah.
We love Joy Reid. She always gives us something to laugh at each night. Now, Tevi, I want you to, you know, we have a little bit of time together, so I want to make sure that we get through the premise of the book and your thoughts on Lutnick. And some musings that you might have on HHS and the future of it as well. But I guess let's start with Howard Lutnick. He seems like a very capable and impressive person that I think could do many things in the administration, not the least of which is serve as Secretary of Commerce. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he seems like a qualified pick for Secretary of Commerce, a impressive guy, obviously a tragic story with Cantor Fitzgerald, but impressive in that the way he built the firm back after that terrible terrorist attack of 9/11. Also, CEO. In my book, Power and the Money, talks about CEOs in politics. So you know that's nothing new to have CEOs involved. And also, a businessman running commerce is not something unusual. Is not at all unusual. Commerce has a lot of powers, a lot of offices underneath it. You've got the Census Bureau, the Oceanic Administration. But also it deals with a lot of promoting American businesses abroad. So it seems like a good fit.
What do you think about, his talks about tariffs and maybe going back to this golden era of America where we were supported by tariffs and there wasn't a progressive income tax?
Well, I'm not a big fan of the income tax, and I think there were some mistakes made when we put that into effect. I'm not sure tariffs alone can finance or should finance the government, but I understand the need for tariffs to promote fairer trade practices around the world. Ideally, we'd have free trade where everybody trades freely without the impositions that the Chinese impose on trade. So tariffs are a tool, but I don't see them as the exclusive financing mechanism of the U.S. federal government.
Folks, again, we're on with Tevi Troy. He's the author of the book, The Power and the Money, the epic clashes between commanders-in-chief and titans of industry. And as we see this unfold, I would say from the recent pick of Matt Gaetz, which set the media and the left on fire, I would say that I think they would be relatively calm with Lutnick. Do you think that's an understatement?
Well, yeah, I would think so, and also that he headed the transition, so he knows the president and he knows the top people in the administration, so he seems like a good pick from that respect as well.
Do you expect him to face a lot of hurdles, or do you think this is one of the smoother, he's probably going to kind of coast right in type of appointments?
Well, let me say this, and I did work transition previously. You never know what's going to show up in someone's background check, but presumably they've done the vetting to this part where there are no surprises. And assuming that that's the case, I think he would have one of the smoother transitions. I will say, having worked transition in the past, there are people you think and then you see their background checks, and you see all kinds of stuff like unpaid taxes and ugly divorces and spousal abuses and traffic tickets. So all kind of crazy stuff can come up in background checks. But presumably, when you get to this point, they have already done those vettings, and it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, one would hope. One would hope. Folks, yeah. Amigos, we're coming right back with Tevi Troy, presidential historian, former White House aide, and he was also Deputy Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about his book, The Power and the Money, the epic clashes between commanders-in-chief and titans of industry. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
There is more news in your commentary, in your analysis, than there is on the news network.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I think Florida is on the way out because of that court decision. I think the faster that it goes out, the better. I'm not going to compel anybody to take it out, but I'm going to advise the water districts about their legal liability, their legal obligation to their service zones and to their constituents, and I'm going to give them good information about the science, and I think that fluoride will disappear.
That, of course, Bobby Kennedy Jr., RFK Jr., presumed, anticipated incoming Secretary of HHS pending Senate confirmation, saying, yeah, we should take a look at fluoride in our water supply and elsewhere. And again, this is another one that's kind of upset some of the folks in the media, but more so to the point of ridicule. Oh, I can't believe you've picked a conspiracy theorist is how they've put it. But I think it's a little bit more than that. And I want to get some reaction from our guest, Tevi Troy. He's former Deputy Secretary at the Department of Health and Human Services. Tevi Troy, do you agree with the media that this is a controversial pick for HHS Secretary, or is it just par for the course with Donald Trump?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's going out on a limb to say it's a controversial pick. Obviously, there are some people who are upset about it, and that makes it controversial. I like the way that Kennedy riles up the careers or the bureaucracy and makes people think. On the other hand, I don't love the fact that he's been too closely allied with the trial lawyers throughout his whole career. So, anyway, I'm open-minded. I want to see how things go in the hearings. I want to see what he has to say, what his agenda is for HHS. I haven't seen a lot of specific HHS policies and what he's tried to say before. Obviously, he's got some questions about vaccines, but I think there's more to be said right now. So I'm kind of waiting with an open mind on this one.
What are some of the areas, I guess, on your wish list of things you're hoping to hear about when it comes to policy, being that you worked in HHS? What are some of the areas I think, or that you think are in need of reform?
Yeah, so I think the three big things are what's going to be the policy about how to cover individuals' health insurance, or what are you going to do with Obamacare? Obviously, I think we as a nation have said we're not getting rid of it. So what kind of regulatory scheme are we going to have? Or are you going to do what the first Trump administration did, which was kind of make it easier to buy insurance plans, allow the so-called skinny plans? Second thing is FDA, and what do you do about the approval of drugs? FDA is often a very difficult and slow-moving agency to navigate, and anyone who can shake that up, I think, is a good thing. And then the third thing is, how are we going to prepare for the pandemics of the future? CDC, there's a lot of big agencies in HHS. CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, has been way too focused on behavioral health in recent years and not enough on communicable diseases and what to do about them. And I'd like to see CDC being less of a nanny-state bureaucracy and more of a anti-dangerous, deadly pandemic-type diseases, protecting us from those type agencies.
And I think those are all very relevant points. With respect to your role in HHS, was it more policy-driven or more operational? What was your time there like?
So I was the deputy secretary, so I had both policy and operational responsibility. And I worked closely with these agencies, with NIH, with FDA, CMS, CDC. We call them the big dogs. Those four agencies are the ones that get most of the attention and most of the power at HHS, although there are 27 direct reports to the secretary and deputy secretary. So it's an enormous agency with huge amounts of power and huge amounts of resources. It was a $800 billion or so agency when I was there. It's now a $1 trillion agency.
Yeah, and you're not kidding when you're talking about power. I'll tell everybody a quick story. I was going to Cannes, France once, and I had a mishap with child support payments I was making. They were taking them out of my paycheck and putting them into an ADP account, but ADP wasn't sending them to the end recipient. So I had no idea, and I tried to renew my passport, and they said, nope, there's a hold on you. And I said, oh, so I go to the Department of State? And they said, no, you have to go to the Department of Health and Human Services, which apparently had a child support unit. And I had no idea about this. And I was like, man, this is a massively large agency. And it came full circle for me. I was able to clear it up when we figured out where the money went. But ultimately, you're right. There's a lot of power. There's a lot of breadth and depth to the department. And I think, earlier I was listening to a clip from Milton Friedman saying, we could abolish a bunch of these agencies. I don't know if HHS is one of those that we could entirely do away with, but I think there's quite a bit of bloat there. If you had a magic wand or a magic scalpel, Tevi Troy, where would you start?
Well, I would start with the behavioral health aspects of CDC. I just don't think they should be doing it. It also overlaps a lot with SAMHSA, which is the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Agency. I think that HHS has, perhaps way too many people at FDA. I think the tobacco agency is something that should not be in HHS's purview, and that's something I argued against them having when I was at HHS. So I would start there. CMS is this vast agency with basically its own army in Baltimore, a massive security force.
Wow. Why?
It's just an enormous bureaucracy out in the suburbs of Baltimore. And
I thought you meant they actually had an army for to enforce Medicare. And I was thinking, why would we need one? Because I've heard crazy stories.
They have the Inspector General's office, so they they do have armed personnel who go to fight against Medicare and Medicaid fraud, which should be done. But again, it's a massive agency. So yeah, I think there's places to take a scalpel to there. Sure.
All right, Tevi Troy, coming back, I want to get your take on the book, why you wrote the book, and why you gave it the really cool title that you did. So stick with us. Folks, we're coming right back with Tevi Troy, presidential historian, White House aide, and former deputy secretary of HHS. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation. Again, open phones across America scheduled to start in just a few minutes. But I want to get the scoop on this book, The Power and the Money, the epic clashes between commanders-in-chief and titans of industry. Such a succinct title from Tevi Troy. Tell us, why did you choose that particular title?
Well, I've been writing about presidents and presidential history for the last 20 years in my fifth book on the presidency, and I try and find something about the presidency that speaks to the current moment. And today, we have CEOs in positions of vast power. They're huge celebrities, and they have all these interactions, clashes, collaborations with presidents. I wrote this even before Elon Musk joined the second Trump administration, and I wanted to look at the history of how CEOs have worked with presidents going back almost 150 years, because it really said something about our nation, our society, and how we got to the current place where both big corporations and big government are so powerful in our lives that we don't even think about it.
Folks, the book is called The Power and the Money, the epic clashes between commanders-in-chief and titans of industry. And Tevi Troy, what's your recommendation to eliminate some of the power that big government has in our day-to-day lives?
Well, it really starts with the regulatory state. I start talking in the Rockefeller days, John D. Rockefeller, when what I call it the blank slate, there was no regulatory state. And in reaction to Rockefeller, we started having the development of all kinds of regulations, and not necessarily a bad thing, because you need some government regulation, you need government to be the umpire in some things. But over time, it's gotten so much more vast and so much more powerful that it's not that corporations can't make money, it's that they do so in service to the government end. The government tells them who they can hire and how they can, what they can sell and where they can sell their products. And it's just so vast that you can't even enforce every regulation. There's so many of them. So what you have, is, unfortunately, is selective enforcement, where the bureaucracy decides where they're going to enforce the regulations that it gets to them, because they can't enforce everybody. So they have to make these decisions.
Wow. Well, we have to start somewhere. Folks, check out his website, tevitroy.org, tevitroy.org. Again, the book, The Power and the Money, the epic clashes between commanders-in-chief and titans of industry. I recommend you grab his fifth book here and get 2 copies, one for yourself, one to give away. You've got Hanukkah and Christmas coming right around the corner. If you're off for Thanksgiving, you may want to try and get a little reading done as well, or at least a little early Christmas shopping. Again, The Power and the Money, the epic clashes between commanders-in-chief and titans of industry. Tevi Troy, I want to thank you for being here and giving us the scoop on everything that's going on.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. And folks, open phones across America is coming up right now. Get your calls in, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you this Thursday night. We are live, we're national. Here's our phone number if you want to chime in. 833-482-5337, 833-4 Valdez. We're talking about cabinet picks. We're talking about the news of the day. And we're talking about Matt Gaetz being out and Pam Bondi being in. Again, I want to encourage you to call. If it's the first time you've ever called, you've never called Talk Radio before, I'd love to chat with you tonight about this topic if you got something to say. If you disagree with me, I'd also encourage you to call. We put the first-time callers first. We make the disagreeers right after you. And everybody else, as you come in, we will take you. Now, again, 833-4-VALDEZ is the number. And I got a report from News Nation on that very story. Check this out.
Matt Gaetz, the congressman from the state of Florida, said he would no longer run for the attorney general nomination. And within moments, the president-elect Donald Trump saying Pam Bondi, the former attorney general in the state of Florida, will be his new nomination for the attorney general nominee for this country. She was the first woman elected as Florida's AG. She served for 8 years from 2011 to 2019.
Again, Matt Gaetz has withdrawn his name. Pam Bondi is now in the running for attorney general. And there is some conversation to be had. If you're just joining us, welcome. Earlier this evening, I sat down with Trump's attorney, Jesse Binnall, to get his analysis and reaction to this. Listen to this. So let's talk about this development here with Matt Gaetz. Do you think this is a big wrinkle? Is it par for the course? I mean, from my perspective, analyzing it politically, I think these things happen pretty regularly. You know, somebody puts somebody up for a position, doesn't work out, they pick somebody else. Am I being too flip about it?
No, I don't think you're being flip at all. And, let me just say that it just shows that President Trump is willing to be courageous in putting the right person up for the job, regardless of whether he thinks it's politically correct. The sad thing is that we've got a few people in a few senators that have an R next to their name that didn't have the courage necessary to support Matt Gaetz, because Matt Gaetz, I think, would have been an excellent attorney general. Matt Gaetz I truly understands the Department of Justice. I've been in depositions with him on Capitol Hill, where he was the only member of Congress who spent an entire day in a deposition and just knows the facts backwards and forwards. He's an excellent guy. As the president said, I'm sure he has an excellent future in front of him. But it's America's loss. That being said, the president went immediately with another A player, somebody who will be an absolutely outstanding attorney general in picking Pam Bondi for the position, and somebody who has served as a state attorney general for 8 years, and is very, I think, dedicated to rooting out the lawfare that we've seen in our Department of Justice. She knows that the Department of Justice has strayed from its roots of, for instance, going after violent crime and protecting Americans, to instead trying to enforce a political agenda, and that this isn't going to be small little tweaks in order to bring the Department of Justice back to what it really should be. It's going to need some major overhauling, and Pam Bondi has the courage to do that.
Jesse Binnall, I agree with you 1,000% that we need massive reform, and I agree with you also that A, she's loyal, and B, she's competent and able, Pam Bondi, to pull this off. I think the bigger question is dealing with the swamp. I think that's the only place where Matt Gaetz might have had a leg up, is that, he's been in the swamp for a number of years now, fighting off the alligators. Whereas, she's been enjoying sunny South Florida, and God bless her, right? Not a slight on her in any way. I wish I was in Florida. But
Yeah, me too.
I think that was part of President Trump's learning curve, right? In his first go round, is that he came and he thought, I'm a New Yorker. You can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And then you get to the swamp and you realize, man, these people are more vicious than anything we've ever seen. What are your thoughts? In that
but
regard?
let me just say on top of that, one of the really important things that the president has done is the entire team he's putting together for the Department of Justice, because it's not going to be just Pam Bondi.
Right.
And make no mistake, Pam Bondi, while luckily for her, she's been dealing with the far more tame type of alligators in Florida, as opposed to the vicious backstabbing alligators in Washington, D.C., she has spent plenty of time in Washington, D.C. She knows the way politics works. She knows the way that the swamp works. But on top of that, you get that team, people like Todd Blanche, Emil, the Principal Deputy Attorney General, John Sowers, the Solicitor General, and the team at the Department of Justice continues to be fleshed out. These are lawyers that really, truly know the Department of Justice, know that the bureaucracy, and are going to be able to help her gut it.
Yeah, I think that's well put, and it's my hope that it goes just that smoothly, because we definitely need that type of reform. Now, putting you in that position, what's the first thing you do when you get to Washington, or what do you recommend the first thing Pam Bondi do when she gets to Washington?
You have to get rid of people's fiefdoms. There are so many career lawyers at the Department of Justice that, A, believe that they're above the law, and B, think that there are certain aspects of the Department of Justice that belong to them because they've spent years there and they've created their own fiefdoms there. Mm-hmm. You need to take and, while you can't just take and go in on day one, unfortunately, I wish you could, fire the entire bureaucracy. There are people that do need to be fired early. Don't get me wrong, but then there are other people that need to be transferred around, and it can't just be that they find a way to just get a leg up in a new position that's going to allow them to obstruct President Trump's agenda. There may be some people that need to be transferred to other parts of the country. We need to get some of these DOJ jobs out of the swamp, out of Washington, D.C. We are going to need a lot of lawyers, for instance, handling immigration cases, because that's going to be a huge priority in the new Department of Justice. And so you need to get rid of these fiefdoms. Another thing that you need to do is you need to appoint lawyers to investigate the Department of Justice's misconduct, and quite frankly, other state prosecutors' misconduct as well. And so, for instance, when lawyers have used their positions in the federal government in order to enact a political agenda, and they've violated people's civil rights when doing that, that is a violation of federal law. And so we need to be taking that very, very seriously. That needs to be a priority in the Department of Justice. And people that, for instance, have used their position in written politically charged briefs attacking President Trump, supporting President Biden while acting on behalf of the United States in criminal matters, like we've seen in some of the J6 cases. Those are just some things I think should be investigated and charges should be brought if we can show that prosecutors have been using their jobs to advance a political agenda.
Now, Jesse Binnall, attorney for President Trump, when you talk about I agree with what you're saying, and I'm just trying to clarify it a step further with asking the question. Do you recommend that these are isolated instances where we go after Attorney A, Attorney B, Attorney C for their particular malfeasance, or is this a systemic problem that we say, you know what, we have to go with Congress, we need rules changes, new regulations, or is it a combination thereof?
Well, it's a combination for sure. And but it is, let's be clear, the problems in DOJ are systemic. But the Department of Justice likes to talk about its independence. They believe very strongly that they are an independent department, and that is just completely wrong. It's against the very spirit of the United States Constitution. The United States Constitution didn't create a fourth branch of government for the Department of Justice. The Constitution says that the president controls the executive branch. And if you actually want to spend some time and look at, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, the debates that the founders had when they were forming our Constitution, there are people that didn't want that unitary executive theory, that the idea that you would have one president that's in charge of the executive department. There are some people that want something similar to what a lot of states have, where you could have a president of one party, a vice president of another party, and an attorney general of a separate party as well. And they decided not to do that. They wanted it to be cohesive, and I think the founders put together, the most amazing document ever when they governance document ever when they gave us our Constitution, and they were right in the way that they did it. And the beauty of it is the checks and balances, and what the bureaucrats at the Department of Justice want to believe is that by being independent, it means they're accountable to no one, that they are above the law and they don't have to answer to anyone for their actions, and that they can use their own personal political agenda in order to go into court and pursue that rather than the law.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
And I'll tell you, Rich, people like you during the dark days of the 21, 22, 23, where you were a voice of light and strength to a lot of us.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Right now, the Democratic Party is mush. It is mush. It is a broken party. It needs, and one also thing that saves parties, if you go back to Ronald Reagan, if you go back to Barack Obama, is a transformational candidate. What changes everything is when that one person comes along that embodies, can say, I can fix your problem. So that person, we may be in the discussion right now, maybe somebody who's not in the discussion, but the Democratic Party needs that fresh face.
That is Donnie Deutsch on MSNBC saying the Democrats don't have a transformational leader. They don't have a transformational candidate to bring change. They need a fresh face. I'm guessing that fresh face was not the face of Kamala Harris. I'm guessing she's probably not going to be able to run for president again. We'll see what happens. But I want to get to your calls. I appreciate you waiting patiently. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And let's start right here with my buddy Jerome, Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Jerome, go right ahead.
Hey. You talk about fresh face. It ain't Donald Trump either, because he's 78 freaking years old. How could he be a fresh face?
I think he's the fresh face when you compare it to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
78 years old. 78. Hey, by the way, anybody seen old Matt Gaetz? Out the door. He's gone. And you know who's next? That little pervert Hegser from Fox, $87 million.
Oh, hold on a second. I'll give you the Gaetz. You did say Gaetz would be gone, and I said I'm very confident that he'll get confirmed. He didn't even get to the confirmation hearing, so that's a point for you, and I'll take the L on that one. But as far as Hegseth goes, I'm hearing quite the opposite, and we have a clip of audio on that. Listen to this.
As far as the media is concerned, I'll keep this very simple. The matter was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared, and that's from the legal.
So there you go. Completely investigated, completely cleared. Jerome, I don't know. But yes, you were correct. Gaetz is out. I was wrong. You were right. You win. If I had a T-shirt to send you, I'd put it in the mail for you, but we were sold out of those. Jerome in Charleston, South Carolina. Stay on the line, though. If we do get some more T-shirts, and give the call screener your size and your address, and we'll send one to you because you're the winner of that one. Jerome, thanks a lot, brother. And let us continue with our journey across the country. Carol, Chicago, Illinois, WLS. Go right ahead.
Yes, hello. This is my first time being a caller to a talk radio show.
I'm honored. Thank you, Carol.
I don't know if they have an economist or anybody that works in the Federal Reserve in this government, but I've been rather curious about why are we sending $50 million out of this country to save the Amazon rainforest?
You know, Carol, that's a great question. And you know who was asking questions like that a long time ago, a real long time ago, like 10, 12 years ago? Donald Trump. He was asking questions like that. And he made a lot of sense, you know, just wondering. That's how this whole America First thing came about, where he was saying, you know, we've got to take care of America because the focus is too much on going other places. Now, I believe that you kind of have to take care of a lot of people when you're the United States because you're the big guy on the block. It's like being the rich person in your family, right? Everybody's going to come to you for a loan, for this, so-and-so, your aunt, your uncle, your niece, whatever. Everybody needs something, and they're looking at you because they're like, well, you're the one making the millions of dollars, right? So I feel, or if you're the big guy walking down the street and an old lady gets robbed, they're going to look at you and be like, come on, you're the guy with all the muscles. Go beat this person up. Go get that lady's pocketbook back. So I think when countries get jammed up, they're going to look to the United States. Now, how much of that help we give, it depends on a lot of things. I think you can be charitable, but you can't be foolish. And like Trump was charitable and wise, judicious, and benevolent, but Biden, foolish. Now, is it really foolish or is it maleficent? And I think it might be probably a little bit of both. What ends up happening, Carol, is sometimes these like programs like USAID, they extract so much money through quote unquote foreign aid that it really just becomes a bribe, and then it becomes a deal that's worked about between the politicians, just like people that run buildings for unions and for big buildings in New York City or elsewhere, where they'll say, oh yeah, hire the plumber, and then they tell the plumber, all right, listen, plumber, this is a $40,000 job. You know it and I know it. But guess what? You're going to bill us for $60K. I'm going to pay you to $60K. And then, you know, I'm going to take 20 off the top. You're going to take your 40 or, you know, whatever. Or split the 20. People do deals like that all the time. And the corrupt politicians in our government are no different. And that's why they're like, oh, you need money for your Amazon rainforest? No problem. We're going to get you that money. And by the way, when you get the money, you got to hit me back with half. And then they start funneling money this way, that way, and the other way. Oh, can we hire you for a speech? Can we hire you for this? Can we do that? Can we hire your son to be on a board? You know, all sorts of crazy things start to happen when you're sending money all over the world. Carol, thanks for the call. Big shout out to Chicago, Illinois, WLS. Folks, we're coming right back. We've got calls from Mississippi, Missouri, Montana. What's that? Idaho, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Canada, and more. 833-4-VALDEZ. Keep it locked right here. Coming right back.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Now that the ICC has issued warrants for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, Canadian law enforcement is obligated to arrest them should they come to Canada. Will you allow that to happen, or will you step in to prevent an arrest?
First of all, as Canada has always said, it's really important that everyone abide by international law. This is something we've been calling on from the beginning of the conflict. We are one of the founding members of the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice. We stand up for international law, and we will abide by all the regulations and rulings of the international courts. This is just who we are as Canadians.
That is the pendejo in chief in Canada. His name is Justin Trudeau, and he says he's going to lock up Netanyahu in a roundabout way. I doubt it very much, but hey, stranger things have happened. Anyway, let's go to the phones. Ken, Lansing, Michigan, WILS. Ken, go for it.
Rich, what a great time to hear you again, my friend. We're getting near the Thanksgiving season, and God granted us all a Thanksgiving with Donald Trump. So God bless Donald Trump.
God bless America.
Just one side note, because I didn't tell you the call screener, but Carol, the first-time caller, and we've already given $50 million to a fund for the Amazon, and they took Joe Biden down there, and the news was bragging, oh, he's the first American president ever to visit the Amazon. They could have took him 10 miles into the Maryland woods and told him that he wouldn't have known the difference. So let's be honest.
That's true. That is
the
true.
fact that we're giving them $50 million more, when the reason we're trying to reforest it is because commercial loggers and commercial farmers have come in there and cleared that land for their own profit. But now they expect the United States to take taxpayers' dollars and blow it on what them people made profit on. I heard Vivek today on an interview. That guy is sharp as a tack. I tell you, he is going to be great for America also.
100% right, Ken. I agree with you on all accounts. And again, I don't want to say I'm sorry. I think he's going to do a great job with Elon Musk in the Doge effort, but the Department of Governmental Efficiency. But I got to say, I think he'd be very capable in a lot of places. The good news is he's like 4 or 5 years younger than me, I think. So he's going to be rocking and rolling for quite a while. Ken, shout out to WILS. Thank you, my brother. Let us continue. Where do I want to go? Bill, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA. Go for it.
Hey, Rich.
How are you,
man,
brother?
I was gonna tell you I'm jumping up and down because the Steelers beat the Browns tonight, but they didn't. Oh my God!
Black and yellow.
Yeah, black and blue. But anyways, Rich, I want to tell you something. 2 weeks ago, 2.1, I guess. I was thrilled. I was actually the most happiest that I have been in my life. Well, except for a few things. But anyway, these Democrats are chipping away at us. Why can't we stop this, Rich? They got 2 months. They got 2 months to chip away. They are like chipping. You know what, man? They lost. They need to go away.
You're right, Bill. And here's the thing. This is like hitting the lotto, right? You've hit the lotto. You have the winning ticket. You have yet to go to the lottery agency to collect your winnings. So people will talk smack. I can't believe I didn't win. I can't believe this guy, Bill in Pittsburgh, won. But, Bill, you have the winning ticket. You've got it. Whether you've collected your cash yet or not, it's yours. So guess what? Let them complain. That's all they've got at this point, right? All they can do is complain because Trump's already, in my opinion, he's winning, right? He's dominating headlines, appointing people to positions, the office. He didn't have to create the office of the president-elect like Biden did. And Biden did more with that office of president-elect than anything, and still named people further down the line. So I think Trump's doing an amazing job. He's already got people withdrawing from their positions. He's got lawyers in D.C. getting lawyered up and other Department of Justice employees shaking things up. They sense what's coming, and I think that's great. You got world leaders saying, look, we're willing to talk, including Putin and others. I think it's a good thing. So let the Dems complain. We've got the winning ticket. Bill in Pittsburgh, PA, shout out to KDKA. Let us continue. Where do we go from here? Maybe we go further up north to Tony, giving us a call from Montreal, Canada. Tony, go for it.
How you doing, Rich? Nice talking to you again. I appreciate you taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Justin Trudeau is just a pontificator. He's a propagandist, no different than Joe Biden. He will do nothing, and if he continues to pontificate that he's going to arrest, Netanyahu, then he will lose the next election because the conservatives will certainly be on the opposite side of that question. But I just wanted to mention this thing. The other caller was right. They're chipping away. Like, to me, when the president of the United States wins a landslide in the college, wins a landslide in the popular vote, I mean, he's got the House, he's got the Senate. Now people are chipping away at Gaetz, and then it'll be RFK, and it'll be someone else. We have to be vigilant. Republicans have to be vigilant. We won. We have to be militantly vigilant, Rich, because, we can't give them an inch. They'll take a yard. They're not going to stop. And, you listen to them. They complain about everything. But, you have a star candidate that brought the American public what they wanted because he's a common sense billionaire. He's the blue collar billionaire, right? He can talk to those people. And, I appreciate the fact that he's going after loyalty because, Rich, he needs people that are loyal around him. That's why he's going after Pam Bondi. And he's going after people that are going to support him, through hell and high water. He's not going to get people that are going to be fair-weather friends and turn on him in the middle of a crisis. That's why.
Right. He doesn't want Justin Trudeau, right? He doesn't want a friend like that who's going to try and lock up his Israeli counterpart in being a prime minister. I think you're right, Tony. The Democrats are out of control. The radical lefties are nutso, in my opinion. And Trump's got to focus on what he's got to focus on. He's done this before. Who are any of us to tell him, what to do? We could tell him, hey, look, we the people, we're your boss, and we've done that. Now we've got to let him do what he said he was going to do, and he's got a finite time to do it, and he's got a lot of work ahead of him. But I think if anybody could pull it off, he can. Tony, shout out to you guys in Montreal, Canada. Thank you for tuning in from way up north. I appreciate it. And folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez keeping you company straight till 1 a.m. Eastern time. And, for a while I've been lobbying our good executives at Westwood One, my favorite radio network, for a fourth hour. And I don't know if I'm getting it, but I'm reminding them for Hanukkah, for Christmas, for New Year's, for Thanksgiving, whatever you want to give me a gift for. I want a fourth hour of live talk radio, even if it's not live. I'll take a recorded hour. Just give me another hour where I can do a little bit more with you all, the amazing callers on this program. And, it's an interesting factoid. I think I played a clip of this the other day, but I've known it for quite some time since I've been in radio. But Larry King the other day, in the clip that we played, I think he said that only about 1 or 2% of your audience actually ever calls in to the radio show. And I find that to be true. It takes a certain person, and we have some great callers here, but the majority of the people, the 99% of those listening, don't ever call. So, of course, I want to thank the ones that do and the ones that don't, because they're listening. And without listeners, you don't have a radio show. So I want to thank all of those wonderful listeners that tune into this wonderful program on the Westwood One radio network. But I also wanted to take a moment to thank everybody that I was with tonight. Tonight I was at a retirement party for Special Agent. He's actually a Assistant Federal Security Director at JFK Airport for the Department of Homeland Security. His name, John Valdez. That's right. He's my brother. And he's retiring from the Department of Homeland Security today after 22 years of service to the feds, which he did in retirement after 20 years of service to the NYPD. That's 42 years of policing from my brother John, and he's still at it. He looks like a spring chicken. He's in great shape, tough guy, and he's a great cop, a great patriot, and great American. So kudos to you, John Valdez, Assistant Federal Security Director, based out of JFK Airport. Also, a big shout out to the TSA, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI office as well. Those guys have been listeners of mine since I was on local radio in New York City. So shout out to that FBI satellite office there as well. And congratulations to John on an amazing career. Now, I also want to get back to your calls now that I've thanked my brother and congratulated him and asked Westwood One for another hour. And I'm hoping that we get it, and I hope we get it soon. But I want to go to Pat in Sedona, Arizona. Pat, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, thank you. Man, I've been having a hard time trying to get a hold of you, but, man, I got through. I thought maybe they sold your radio station or they put you in jail, but I'm so glad to hear your voice.
Thank God.
Of reason in this country. I tell you, man, it's rough. What I want to talk to you about tonight is scorched earth. Do we have to really worry about this? Because Joe Biden seems like he's getting a little off handle. He's escalating the thing over there in Ukraine with shooting the missiles at each other. And the deep staters are just, they're finding ways. They're going to make, by the time Trump gets in January 20th, we may not have much of a country left. We may have one heck of a mess. I mean, these immigrants are running at our border, and that means the border to my state in Arizona. I mean, and it's an open book. I mean, Katie Hobbs, the state attorney, all of them, they don't care. They're all mad that Trump won, and our politics in this state is embarrassing for most people in our state are very embarrassed. Even some good old Democrats are embarrassed about how they stole the election. It seems like they stole the election from Carrie
Lake. Yeah, and you know, Pat, you're right in that it seems so odd that Carrie Lake's such a likable figure. She always does so well, so close, and then it's like, but doesn't get over the edge. And I would understand that if they had a competitive candidate on the other side. But when you talk about Katie Hobbs, and I'm not buying it. I really just don't think that Katie Hobbs is really where it's at. Call me crazy, Pat. But I want to thank you for tuning in tonight, for your kind words, always being a patriot, and for streaming the show. I know you're in Sedona, but you can stream the show on KFNX, great station out of Phoenix, and I thank you for that. Let's continue. JJ Jackson, Mississippi, WVBG. Thanks for your patience. Go for it.
Hey, man. Good evening, man. Thanks for taking my call. And
my pleasure.
Congrats to your brother, John.
Thank you.
Just real quick as I can. From the other night, I think your topic was about the lady who was, talking about the white men being oppressed.
Oh, you're talking about Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett from Texas.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say right quick that I pretty much do agree with a lot of what she's saying. Although I myself, I'm not the guy that plays, the victim. I actually don't. But I'm not naive to a lot of stuff that happened, to my ancestors.
Sure.
One thing that I have a problem with, America as a whole, not saying everybody, but as a whole, we don't want to own up and acknowledge what really did happen. And, it's like we want to sweep it up under the rug, so to speak. And in my opinion, it's like a marriage. If the husband goes out and does something to the wife, terrible, and then they try to make back up. Okay, well, he just can't say, okay, well, look, just get over it. I did it. So, okay,
That's never going to fly right. Yeah.
I did it. But so we have to fully, sincerely now, not just come across in a, oh, well, look, just get over that. When people were raped, lynched, families torn apart, you cannot just be that, these, and the residue of all of that has trickled down. And that's just my opinion on that. So that's all I pretty much want to say.
Well, JJ, I'm not going to disagree with you on several points. I agree that the racism and oppression and systemic racism that we had in this country a long time ago was ugly and evil and nasty, and it should never have happened, and it should never happen again. And I agree. I think where people end up at odds is on the point you made where you said they want to sweep it under the rug. Maybe there are people that want to sweep it under the rug, and maybe there are some people that really have never felt the personal pain of it, so it's not something they can personally relate to other than saying, oh, yeah, I once read that, we had slaves. Okay, thanks, next. For others, they grew up with maybe a grandmother or a great-grandmother or grandfather who acted a certain way and raised them a certain way to keep certain tradition and memories alive. And I'll give you an example that's unrelated, but an example nonetheless. My dad grew up on a farm in Puerto Rico, and he wasn't trying to teach me about customs or history or our culture. He was just teaching me what he knew as a poor farm kid from Puerto Rico. And because you learn things a certain way, you teach your own kids a certain way, right? And then my kids get a little bit of that, plus the nuance that I bring to the table. So I get that part, and I think that's accurate, right? There were things. A couple of years ago, I learned about something, more than a couple, probably about 10, but I learned about something called buck breaking. Now, I did not know what buck breaking was 10 years ago. And someone explained it to me, and that it was the practice of tying a male slave to a whipping post and then violently raping them in front of other male slaves to subjugate those slaves. I had no idea what that was. That is barbaric, brutal, evil, and gruesome. And to your point, we can't pretend that stuff didn't happen, but if we don't know it happened, then we can't address it and talk about it. So I'll agree on we need to know more about our history, but I'll double down and say we have to move on from that history because we're not there anymore. JJ, excellent conversation. I have to take a pause right here. Otherwise, we could do this for an hour. Really pleasure talking to you. I hope you call back again. Shout out to JJ in Jackson, Mississippi, WVBG. Coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. The best 3 hours in live late night talk radio. Not because I do it, but because I am my own biggest fan. Anyway, we've got Paul in Boise, KBFI, Frank in Evergreen, KOFI, Steve in Cleveland, Ohio, WEOL, Jim in Pittsburgh, KDKA. Steve's been on hold the longest. Steve, I can't get to you because they're playing the music, but you said you think Pam Bondi's going to be a sleeper. I guess I'll agree with you and disagree with you there. I think she's going to be terrific, and I don't think anybody should sleep on her. Folks, it's been my pleasure to be here. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. Hasta la próxima. I'm Rich Valdez.